or no?
Okay, welcome to Confidential Cinema. We can't get anybody's schedule here to do debates, so what we're going to start doing is, hey, who wants to debate? This is now just random debate. I'm going to come up with questions, and we're going to see how it goes. Tonight, we're going to have two loudmouths. We got Caleb Coho and the man that normally is in charge of this channel, not tonight, Henry Sanchez. Again, these two are super heated when it comes to debate. They are both very good. Caleb's known as the one away kid. He's always one question away, and Henry gets really pissed at whoever judges against him. So we'll see what happens. Henry,
Only for about a span of 5 minutes until after, and then I'm good.
So Henry, how are you feeling tonight going against Caleb? You've heard your guys' questions. You have had very little time to prep for them. How do you think you'll do?
This is an exhibition, so I'm gonna take it seriously as far as debate style, but as far as emotions off the field, I'll be fine. So I'm just ready to have some fun. And if I lose to Caleb, I'll jump off a bridge. So we'll see.
Yeah,
good.
Just to let you know, whoever loses this match, the winner has to face somebody that gets a free buy into the number one contender. No, I'm just kidding.
Ooh, too soon. Too soon.
Caleb, how are you feeling today?
If that happens, though, hopefully they play the entire debate.
Oh, Caleb.
Oh, God.
Whoa. Caleb, how are you feeling? You are known as the loudmouth of the community. You have very hot takes, and some of your questions, your answers, you have hot takes. So, how do you think you're going to go against Henry tonight? And how are you feeling?
I'm good. Henry doesn't totally scare me as a debater. Maybe that's because we've fought before, like behind the scenes, and I've won. Just in that one little fandom match, fandom question we did.
Thank God it was a fandom one.
But here's the thing. I feel good. I like the questions. I feel good in my mini prep that we had in limited amount of time, like i.e. like
an hour.
less than half an hour. I think we had a total of 15 minutes to do prep, maybe. So this will be fun. And no matter what, this is just gonna be a blast. So, and if I lose, I'll kill myself.
Yeah. So we don't want to take up much time. I've got Malcolm and Jacob both here to help me judge. At the end, we will go to each one of them. But basically how it's going to work is you're going to get a minute opening, then a 5-minute just free form yelling back and forth. Please have some respect for each other. Do not just run over each other the entire time. And you'll have 45 seconds to a minute to close it out and give us your final thoughts on it. Again, it's going to be first to 5. There is no speed rounds. It is 5 straight questions. They've all given their answers. Each one of them know what the other person picked. And we're going to start with question number 1. Question number 1 from should have been an Oscar-winning actor. No, I'm just kidding. But it's a best Adam Sandler movie. So Henry threw his answer out first, so I'm going to let him go first. So you'll close on this question. Henry, tell me what you picked.
So when you think of best Adam Sandler movie, there's a couple of approaches you can take. You can think of his shtick and his style, or you can just think of the overall pick. And I'm going with the overall here. The best movie that you honestly forget is an Adam Sandler movie because you don't think of him as Adam Sandler. You think of him as Barry Egan. That's Punch Drunk Love, Paul Thomas Anderson's 2002 film that is super underrated, but the people who have seen it love it, respect it. They think this is Adam Sandler's best movie. I honestly think that Adam Sandler is afraid to go back to this because we'll talk about that later.
Boom. Short and sweet, but you got your point out. Caleb, tell me what is the best Adam Sandler movie?
Like Henry said, you can think of the shtick, the over-the-top kind of dumb comedy he's known for, or you can kind of look through his filmography, and there are some gems in there. One of those gems happens to be Bedtime Stories. It's one of those films that he does where he genuinely plays this charming sort of uncle character, and the whole film is this sweet, charming is utterly the word, story about an uncle who looks after his niece and nephew while their mom is away on a job interview, and he entertains them by bringing worlds to life through story. And when the kids hear the stories, they in turn start coming to life. The stories start happening in his life, and it's kind of fun. The more you kind of look into the overall story, you can kind of come up with a couple of theories. Maybe that it's just him internalizing things that happen in his everyday life and putting them in stories. But overall, it's a charming, fun, witty story, and I love it more than Punch Drunk.
Time. Hey, sorry, I don't mean to laugh at that. That's the first time I've ever heard that uttered for bedtime story. You're gonna have 5 minutes again. Please do not just run over each other the entire time. Use the hand raise. 30 seconds back and forth pretty much works out. 5 minutes whenever you start speaking.
All right, so the thing with Punch Drunk Love is it's one of the movies that is a lower end Paul Thomas Anderson movie for most people, but it's a higher end performance from Adam Sandler. You really get that internal struggle from that anger. The anger that you get in his early movies like Happy Gilmore, The Waterboy, Wedding Singer, Big Daddy, where he does that yelling thing. You really get it in Punch Drunk Love, but you get it from a more emotional, impactful thing. And it has a dark comedy to it and also has this weird, awkward quirkiness that really shows that he actually has range as an actor. And it's really, really great.
So what I just heard you say is that he's doing the exact same thing that he's done in terms of anger, but another director is just molding it to fit his style. And Paul Thomas Anderson is not necessarily, they call him quirky. That doesn't necessarily make it good. The thing is, the whole movie feels really off kilter and off pace, and it doesn't really work. It's overall it just kind of feels like a bit of a drag. And Adam Sandler doing the same thing, just in the context of a PTA movie. Whereas Bedtime Stories is genuinely something different. While Adam Sandler is not necessarily his oddball, quirky, angry self, he's actually kind of this charming dude. And all the comedy that they use is kind of high, not necessarily highbrow, but like more family friendly and witty. Because they don't go to the raunchy right away. They kind of just go for witty. And that's kind of what I enjoy seeing a little bit more than the weird quirkiness of a PTA movie.
See, the thing with Bedtime Story is it tries to swing for the fences with like the whimsical part of it, the fantasy, but it really misses. But you can just tell that the filmmaking is not there and that Adam Sandler is just out of his element trying to do something that is not exactly for him. And I don't want to harp on this too much because I'm not trying to be a jerk, but the kid actors, they're not really that good. They're not really bringing it. And when it's just Adam Sandler and some kids, you really need those child performances to stand out. And it just really doesn't do that for it. The CG and the effects just don't hold up. They're not that great. And Adam Sandler, you can just tell that he's holding back, but not in the way he does in Punch Drunk, but in the way that he just is not comfortable.
I completely disagree. The thing is, Adam Sandler isn't being reserved or holding back. He's actually just trying something different that we don't normally see. It's because it's not the Adam Sandler you necessarily expect to see in an Adam Sandler movie. He is playing the more reserved, quippy uncle that happens that happens to throw out a jab at his kids every now and then. Sure, the kid actors aren't amazing, but the rest of the cast is. Sam Rockwell is actually a really good antagonist. Russell Brand is actually pretty enjoyable, and plus you have Richard Griffiths, who is outstanding. He is he's the phenomenal hotel manager who is hilarious. He steals every scene he's in, and his chemistry with Adam Sandler is awesome. They bounce off each other really well. Kerry Russell is a really good love interest. And the thing is, even though they swing for the fences, they do succeed 9 times out of 10 with this movie. Like whenever they bring up one of the stories, the story is really fun and really enchanting. And then when it connects to the real life story, it's really great. Whereas the thing with Punch Drunk Love, no one is really doing anything. The movie's really stale, really dry, and everyone is reserved. But in terms of reserved, it's an excuse for not acting. They're just stale pieces of white bread the entire movie.
See, the thing that you're missing out with that is what you said with Adam Sandler just doing his own thing. It's different because he's yelling and being loud, but that's the only similarities. He's really having that emotion, that anger from deep within because the whole point of Punch Drunk Love is finding yourself. Him and Emily Watson, their relationship together, they don't know exactly what they're doing. And even Emily Watson seeing that he's kind of toxic, but she's still willing to let him in his life because she's damaged goods. And you have the relationship between Barry Egan and all of his sisters and how he's kind of like, they literally call him the R word a lot in this movie because they just look down on him as a character, but it's still because it's their brother and he's kind of the reject. But there's times of moments of the moving moments where they still have his back and they still support him. They're like, why didn't you talk to us? Why didn't you tell us? And that's the conflicting part because it's like he's being pushed away from his sisters the entire time of being the reject, but then he's also being blamed for not like reaching out to them for the love and the respect that they need or like making them look bad and all that stuff. It's just that moments. And it's such little things like finding the piano that he's harping on. He's like, this is important to him because it's so minimal in his life, but it really means a lot to him. Whereas in Bedtime Stories, it's just a bunch of fantasy elements that just come together. It has a nice overall attempt, but it's I wouldn't say it's a swing and a miss, but it's a single. It's a bunch. It doesn't really have that emotional impact. When you think of Adam Sandler, you don't think of Bedtime Stories. When you think of Adam Sandler, you always think of Punch Drunk Love. Even if it's not for his comedy, you still think of that in there. You don't think of Bedtime Stories ever.
Except you don't. The thing is, bedtime stories, all it is it's stale. It's stale performances. You're bringing a lot of your own inference to that.
Yeah,
whereas the movie doesn't give you any of that. You're projecting what you want to see into this movie of people not really acting. They're all pieces of wood and bricks. Whereas bedtime stories, it does actually land on the emotion. It brings that family connection. It does succeed because the thing is, with the fantasy elements, it brings this family together in a heartwarming way where he's able to connect with his estranged nephew and niece through the stories that he tells them. He is able to win back Carrie Russell, and the two end up getting together. It's charming. It's fun. It's full of heart, and the way that it brings it all together through the fantasy elements really works. I wouldn't call it a single; I'd call it a home run. Whereas the thing with Punch Drunk Love is it's a bunt that goes out of bounds.
That's that, Mattress Man.
Okay, 45 seconds to a minute to close. Kaleb, you're going to go first. Henry, you're going to close.
The thing with Punch Drunk Love is that it's PTA trying to do a PTA thing with Adam Sandler, which doesn't work. Adam Sandler is doing his Adam Sandler thing, but reserved, which is him not really doing anything. The whole movie, no one really does anything. They're all just kind of blocks of wood that you're inferring what's happening. You're putting what you want to see onto them, and it doesn't really work. You're making up a movie that doesn't exist. Whereas bedtime stories, you see this family connection, you see the family dynamics, you get a whole cast of characters, and it's fun. It is a family film. But that is even better because you get to see all the family connections. You get to see these fantasy worlds. You get to see Adam Sandler play something we never really see him do, which is charming, which is witty, which is he's technically a loser at the start of the film. But the thing is, he's just a dreamer. And we get to see this dreamer go through and reconnect with his family in a big way. And he does it really with a lot of heart and a lot of charm, whereas Punch Drunk Love has no charm. It has no wit. It's just a dry piece of stale white bread wood.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you, Kaleb. Henry? Minute whenever you start speaking.
So you keep harping on the fact that this is a PTA movie and that he's just doing his own thing. But when you think of PTA and his style, there's not really that element to this movie. It's withdrawn because it's one of those things where it's emotionally connected. When you look at favorite Adam Sandler movies or even PTA movies, Punch Drunk Love is on a lot of those lists because it resonates with a lot of people on an emotional level, and they can connect to how there's like shut-ins from or shutouts from their family, they're rejects, or they kind of just don't know how to be socially accepted in environments. And you have standout performances like Philip Seymour Hoffman. He's only in one or two scenes, and he's one of the favorite things for a lot of people in that. But he doesn't ever overshadow Adam Sandler's performance, and you always think of Adam Sandler, him in that purple suit. When you think of Bedtime Story, you don't really think of anything. If you've just seen the movie recently, you might be able to bring up some stuff, but it's never on a top Adam Sandler movie list. It's never something that you just want to pop in right away. You have awkward kid actings, you have some bad CG, and you have some moments that just, don't necessarily connect. And anything that might get you emotional is probably a cheap little emotional, whereas Punch Drunk Love, all the emotion is earned.
Time. Perfect. What a great fight on a okay actor. So I'm going to go to Jacob first, actually. Jacob, you're joining us. Thank you for joining us. Who would you give your point to and why?
So when Kaleb said bedtime stories, I think I audibly laughed. However, he made some bloody brilliant points. He fought extremely well, and I can see why that could be the best Adam Sandler movie. However, he never gave me that argument for why Adam Sandler alone could do that film. I never heard that argument, whereas in Henry, I heard that I did hear, and he didn't harp on it, but I did at least hear that this is why it's the best Adam Sandler film, because no one other than Adam Sandler could have done it. And I never heard that from Kaleb, so that's why I'm going with Henry.
Fair enough. Malcolm, on that side of the world, the same as Jacob. Who would you give the point to and why?
I do agree with all of Jacob's points, and I think that it was a really great debate, but I do think I got more from Henry on Punch Drunk Love than I did from Kaleb on Bedtime Stories. So he gets my point.
And all right, so Henry will take the first point. I was sitting on the same side as I was actually going for Kaleb for most of the fight, but Jacob actually brought it back into that was a pretty strong point. Again, as main judge, you got to keep time. You miss things, but that was actually a strong point that Jacob brought up that Kaleb did not bring up. So I would actually have agreed with you guys on that one. So Henry will take the first point. But hell of a fight for bedtime stories, Caleb. I think we all audibly laughed when we heard it. And
Yeah,
you did
like
a
I said,
great
that's
job
exactly what I knew was going to happen. I was like, I'm pretty sure I should win this, but Caleb's going to make it a little harder than it should be. So good job, Caleb.
Okay, so this isn't actually. I'm a big fan of broad questions when I do debates, because it makes you think and it makes you. You can go all over the place. So the next question is most disappointing movie ever. Focus on the word disappointing. I don't want to hear worst or like stuff like that. Just why was this movie? Why was it disappointing? And Caleb, you're going to open and close this question. So tell us what you picked and why.
When you think most disappointing movie, you got to think of a movie that had a lot of hype, a lot of potential, and a lot of everything that could make your world explode when you see this movie. It's supposed to be the movie that could change the way you see things. It could change the movie industry. Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice had the makings to do all of that. It was supposed to bring the two biggest superheroes of all time to life on the screen together. It was supposed to bring together two enormous icons to not only fight, but to work together, to show these two conflicting ideologies of the hero that is a tortured past and the definition of everything good with humanity, and bring them together in a movie in a way that we've never seen before. With superhero movies being great, that was supposed to be the thing that we got. Except it wasn't. We got a slog, a boring movie that focused too much on supporting characters and not enough on the actual main characters that the movie focused on. It fell apart. It was disappointing. And the thing is, Batman v Superman had so much of a right to be so much better, and it just fell apart in the hands of Zack Snyder.
Time. We've never heard that on the internet before of BVS. So no, just kidding. It was actually a pretty good pickup. So Henry, tell us what you decided to go with as the most disappointing movie of all time.
So when you think of disappointing, you have to think of all the names attached, and you have to think that anything preceding it. And I'm going with a movie that is the third in a trilogy, a movie that is preceded arguably by two of the best movies of all time. I'm going with The Godfather Part 3. This is a movie that has the same director as the first two. It has the same main lead character as the first two, and it has pretty much all the elements that you need from the first two, but it drops the ball. It's not a bad movie, and that's not the question. It's not the worst movie of all time or anything like that. It's the most disappointing. So when you think of The Godfather 1 and 2, two of the best movies of all time, when you think of Godfather Part 3, you think of disappointing. So
okay, ending early. Here we go. BVS, Godfather Part 3. Fight it out.
All right, the thing with The Godfather Part 3 is that it really is disappointing when you look at the fact that the source material was run out. This was going to be something completely original that was trying to make something out of nothing. Even if you put the best people in the world on a turd, it's still a turd. Like, the thing is, there was no way to continue that story into a third one. Whereas with Batman v Superman, there was 70 years worth of material and blueprints to show you how to do it, how to bring these two great characters together, and they failed. It was the first time that we were ever going to see two of the biggest comic book characters, two of the biggest pop culture characters of all time on screen together, and it was completely failed. Like, there was so much hype in seeing Batman and Superman together, and it fell apart.
see, the thing is, I'm not truly understanding why you'd be disappointed from BBS when is directed by Zack Snyder, who made Man of Steel, which there are some people that love the movie, but at the end of the day, it's middle of the road. It is debated. It is, it's something that makes you think that, ooh, there's a chance it might not be good. And guess what? If you saw any of the trailers, you knew exactly what you're getting in for, and you saw Doomsday and you saw how trashy he was in those trailers. You should have already known from the jump that it was not going to be that good of a movie. Whereas The Godfather Part 3, guess what? There's mafia, there's crime all throughout. There's plenty of story that you could tell, but you have Sofia Coppola being as one of the leads with some terrific acting. That there's some choices that you shouldn't have made that just brings it down a level. Whereas The Godfather 1 and 2 arguably are perfect. So Godfather Part 3, honestly, you don't even have to be a turd. You could be a B+ and still disappointing because the first two are A+.
Except that even you just shot yourself in the foot in the same way. You would be disappointed from the trailers of Godfather Part 3 when you saw the shitty Sofia Coppola acting. Like, we can make this argument all day where there's things in trailers that make you disappointed. But the thing is, even if you have Zack Snyder on it, the thing is, Zack Snyder with Man of Steel is supposed to be a little bit promising. If you like Man of Steel, it's a little bit promising because it's like, okay, there were elements that I enjoyed. I like that version of Superman, and I'm excited to see Ben Affleck take on Batman. And the thing is, you had a lot of hype and casting that you were excited about. Jesse Eisenberg basically played a version of Lex Luthor in the Social Network, and they cast him. They had Jeremy Irons, a fantastic British actor, as Alfred coming in. And the thing is, They just failed. They had The Dark Knight Rises, one of the greatest comic books of all time, as source material that you could take and build on. It was Zack Snyder looking at Batman and Superman and going, I want to make a Batman movie, but Superman has to obligatorily be here. And I've always wanted Superman to be Batman, so I'm going to make 2 Batmans in one movie. And he completely missed the mark of what those characters meant and what their significance and their importance to each other and fundamentally who they are as characters, misunderstood them and put them in a movie and made something that wasn't Batman and it wasn't Superman. Whereas Godfather Part 3, it's okay. Like, the thing is, Francis Ford Coppola did not necessarily fail. And when it comes to disappointing, it's still on par with the others. It's still on par with the others. It's still a solid crime mafia movie. And the thing is, they didn't really have anything to expect. You had nothing to really expect. It's a 3rd installment with no source material. The same writer's not back, so it's completely different. Francis Ford Coppola making a sequel to something 20 plus years later is always scary. Just to know that there's a sequel coming out 20 plus years later, you should have known from the get-go. This was probably not going to be great. I was rapping.
All right. So everything that you said with Batman vs Superman is subjective, but when you ask a lot of people what their favorite parts of Batman vs Superman, you're talking about Ben Affleck, you're talking about Jeremy Irons. If you have a movie that is that disappointing, you wouldn't have highlights for it. People would not be upset for the fact that Ben Affleck is now returning as Batman in the upcoming Batman movie. You wouldn't have been hoping that movie would have already come out by now if there weren't highlight moments of that. So it's not even as disappointing as you think, because there are some hardcore lovers of this movie. It is some people's favorite movie of the DCEU. Well, obviously Wonder Woman now, but you have the moments, if you compare it to like Man of Steel, it has all the elements you need, whereas The Godfather Part 3, you said it's a different writer, but it's still Mario Puzo who wrote the books that The Godfather is based on. So it's still got all the elements there that you want. You're like, ooh, it has everything. It might be expanding the source material, but at the end of the day, it's still the same world that you're building, and you still have Michael Corleone, who is arguably one of the greatest movie characters of all time, and you can just tell that Al Pacino did not want to be there, and that really brought it down. And if the fact that your main character, who's arguably one of the best movie characters of all time, doesn't even want to be there, you're not going to want to be there. You're not going to watch it. And guess what? The movie was nominated for Best Picture, so it's still a good movie, but at the end of the day, it's forgotten for part of the trilogy and forgotten as one of the epic movies of all time. So it's definitely a disappointment at drop. Whereas Batman vs Superman's fun.
The thing is, Batman vs Superman's not fun. In fact, the thing is, you can have highlights.
You didn't like that warehouse fight?
Here's the thing. When you look at Batman v Superman, just because there's highlighting moments, it does prove it's a disappointment. Because why aren't those highlights the entire movie? Why is there so much? You're telling me that there's promise in my movie. There was so many promising things in my movie, which is why it's disappointing that those promises didn't pay off. They were empty dreams, empty promises. Whereas Godfather, there was nothing promising. I had nothing to go in to be excited about this because it's 20 years later. The trailers look trash. Sofia Coppola is featured prominently. The thing about The Godfather Part 3 is that you're saying it's disappointing because it's the 3rd installment following up on sequels. It's the same thing with like The Phantom Menace. It's been 20 plus years later and the same guys coming back, and you can be excited and have it fall apart. But the thing is,
it sounds disappointing. Exactly.
You're being disappointed with Godfather Part 3. It was trash.
You're proving the point. No, that is not the case. Batman vs Superman. When you have that warehouse fight, and you have Doomsday, you have the whole third act. It should have focused on the fight, and you had ultimate things.
There was promise.
Time. I will not say time more than twice. All right.
I think I'm first, right?
Yep. Henry, you go first. Caleb, you will close. As soon as you start talking, you got 1 minute, Henry.
All right, so the whole thing you could tell with my opponent is that he's fighting from behind because he's arguably trying to defend why his movie is a bad movie or disappointing for him, where there's highlight moments of the movie, whereas The Godfather, the only real things that you think of The Godfather Part 3 are they keep bringing B back in, and that's more of like a meme for the fact that they made Al Pacino come back for this character. If you don't have the elements of what you really need for the story, it shouldn't have been made. Whereas Batman vs Superman, you have all the elements to make the movie, and it was still good. You have Ben Affleck as Batman, you have everything you need. Whereas Michael Corleone, honestly, you just need to focus on that, and you at least have a solid third movie. And it didn't. It focused on the wrong character, which is why it's disappointing. When you see that in the trailer, you don't necessarily expect that it's going to be in there. You think she's going to be a side character, and that's going in. That doesn't affect your expectations. Where BVS, you got Batman versus Superman. It's exactly what you want. It had the fight. It might not have been long enough for you, but that doesn't make it the most disappointing of all time because it got everything you need, just not enough for some people. But that doesn't make it the most disappointing movie of all time because there are highlights. The highlights are definitely better than the lowlights of Godfather Part 3.
Time. Caleb, close it out.
If you thought what we need is boring basketball court discussions about trades and getting kryptonite into the country while shoving Jolly Ranchers and Granny's piss down your mouth, then you do not understand Batman v Superman. You do not understand those characters and those pop culture icons. And that's exactly, you'd have the same mentality that Zack Snyder did. He did not understand who these characters were or what they were supposed to be. And that's what we got. We did not get Batman. We did not get Superman. We had all the makings. The MCU exists. We had so many great templates to make a great superhero movie, to make a great crossover with two of the greatest pop culture icons of all time. And they botched it by focusing on the wrong things, by fundamentally misunderstanding the characters, by tearing apart what they meant, by not making Batman and Superman together in a movie. Godfather Part 3 had nothing to be excited about, because here's the thing. It's way too long, way too far apart, and there was nothing to really get excited about because Sofia Coppola's in the trailer said she looks trash. Francis Ford Coppola hasn't made a good movie in 12 years. The thing is, The Godfather had nothing promising about it. Batman v Superman was nothing but promises that were never paid off.
Please, judges, script never paid off from the record. Malcolm, I'm going to start with you. Who gets the point and why?
Yeah, this is tough because both of them had a good one, and this was a really good debate, and they both had good points. I'm leaning slightly to Kaleb because I think his points he brought up about when it comes to sequels and there being quite a long gap, and quite often that the long gap does make it disappointing, or does turn out to be disappointing after the long gap because of the. I don't know what I'm talking about, but hopefully you know what I'm meaning. But but yeah, I think with that point, I do think Kaleb edged out Henry just a little bit there.
All right, I will go next. I'm in agreement with you, actually. I think Henry did a really good job arguing it. I just think that he threw some things out, and this is the type of fighter Kaleb is. He takes it and capitalizes on it and keeps running with it. I think he was doing a lot of disservice to his argument, just for future reference, Kaleb. Just saying that she looks in the trailer and she's trash. You said it like 14 times. There's a little bit more. You did show a little bit more in your closing, which made me give it. But I think you sold me technically why your movie overall was the most disappointing for it. So I have to give it to Kaleb. Jacob, how would you have ruled on that?
I would have gone with Kaleb too. And honestly, I think Henry shot himself in the foot the most out of the two of the fighters. The reasoning behind that is because when Henry said, Kaleb kind of got a knockout punch for me when saying that there was the good moments and then the film ultimately didn't live up to the moments in the movie. And when Henry brought up the warehouse fight, yeah, that's something that then ultimately you walk out even more disappointed because Kaleb brought it up. The movie set that moment there, and it didn't live up to it for 2.5 hours. So I would give Kaleb the point. He also mentioned that The Godfather doesn't ever give you that moment that has you like wishing that the whole movie was like that, which ultimately makes it more disappointing. So I would give it to Kaleb.
Fair enough.
For the record, I haven't seen Godfather 3 yet, so
I haven't either. So wow.
If you notice why that was very plot absent, that's why.
Yeah, I knew Kaleb did not watch it.
I didn't either. I had to take whatever you said.
No.
It was just like
I was just hoping that his passion would have shot himself in the foot and he just would have started rambling on over talking, kind of like Ryan and stuff. So I was just going with it.
I know real quick in the debate if somebody's seen a movie and Kaleb never saw that movie because he just kept saying the same thing over and over. And then Henry was missing a lot of plot points, and I was just like, where are we going? Okay, anyways. So this is it was clean sweep on both questions. So, I mean, judges are in sync tonight. So if that tells you anything going forward. This question is going to be fun. So what we did was Best Director, 6 movies or less from 2000 to 2018. So you had to choose one of them. And Henry, you're going to start.
All right. So when you think of a director who is the best of the 21st century is basically what we're saying. You're thinking of a movie of a person who, whenever you see that name attached to something, you're like, I need to see that right now. And especially when you have such a small filmography like we're doing with the Six or Less, that's really hard to do that early. So you either have to have some swings and you have to have some straight up home runs, or you have to have a specific style that really draws in the crowd. And I'm going with one of the most stylistic directors working today, and it's Edgar Wright. He has a trilogy of movies. He has a comic book based movie, and then he has an action-packed musical, and that is what I'm going with. He's got everything you need, and if we're technically counting Fistful of Fingers, then I'm not, but we'll see if we have to count that, because I think it's like 98 or something like that. So for the record, we're not going to count that.
Okay. All right. Edgar Wright for Henry. Kaleb, tell me who you picked and why.
You're exactly right. When you're a young director and you get people excited about your movie, it means you have to be really good or you have to have a style. I went with one of the people who's actually really good. I went with Ryan Coogler, who everyone has the conversation now. Is he the next Spielberg? And that's after 3 movies. He has made Fruitvale Station, a passionate social commentary film starring Michael B. Jordan, and then he made a franchise resurgence film with Creed, which completely saved the Rocky franchise and turned it into something way better than it ever deserved to be, dealing with pathos and legacy. And then he made Black Panther, a superhero film that is now the highest-grossing MCU film of all time, the highest-grossing superhero movie of all time, as well as the first superhero film nominated for Best Picture. Black Panther also deals with like family and culture, and it takes everything that he has talked about in his last couple of movies and ties it into a nice bow in the broader context of a wider franchise and in a superhero genre. He's made 3 kick-ass, fantastic movies that have not been touched, whereas Edgar Wright has made 5 movies. Scott Pilgrim, divisive, kind of falling apart, the world's and not very good. Baby Driver is his only really solid hit along with the Hot Buzz, but that's about it.
Okay, a lot of things thrown out at the end. All right. So 5 minutes freeform whenever you guys start speaking.
So I'll start off by saying Ryan Coogler, he started off with this great movie having an original story based on it might have been based on a book or not, but we didn't prepare, so as we're saying, but it's based on a real life story, so he has something to build on. So he made a good movie, but it ultimately had something to build on. And then Creed, he just pretty much told a cliche boxing movie that is off the Rocky franchise. And of course, people are going to like it because all you have to do is do exactly you have to write the exact formula that you have in a sports movie or a boxing movie and have a nice, well acting lead and Michael B. Jordan, you're going to have a good movie. And then when you have Black Panther, it's a cultural impact. Yes. And it is great for the culture and it is overall a good movie. But when you think of the best director in the 21st century, you got to think of somebody who takes some risk and they pay off. When you think of Edgar Wright, he has a action zombie movie, action comedy zombie movie. He has a satirical, not really a parody, but similar cop movie. You have an alien invasion comedy. You have a comic book movie with martial arts and video game aspects, and you have a action car drama musical with Baby Driver. So he swings for the fences and he goes all out with different genres. He has range, whereas Ryan Coogler, at the end of the day, he's doing exactly what he needs to do. He's doing fine, but he's coasting throughout the way, and he's getting people to like his movies because they're the safe choices.
If we were arguing best writer of the 21st century, yeah, you'd probably win. But here's the thing with Ryan Coogler. He doesn't have to tell an original story necessarily to be good. It's about how he handles what he's been given. Creed takes a franchise that is, cliched. But with Creed, he breaks the mold, he breaks the cliche, and delves into deep things that Rocky was never meant to delve into and succeeds, like legacy and how do I live up to someone that I had never even met before me who has already set my legacy. With Black Panther, sure, it's a superhero movie, but the thing is, you have to be a really good storyteller in order to bring to life a cultural phenomenon that way. And if you want to talk about risks, what's a bigger risk than an all-black cast, which has never been done in a superhero movie before? That was a big risk. And the thing is, Edgar Wright with risks, it's all just kind of regular British comedy. Shaun of the Dead is just kind of a zombie parody, Hot Buzz, a cop parody. He does all kind of the same thing, which is like niche British comedy, whereas Ryan Coogler has done 3 movies and none of them are the same as the other.
Whereas the thing is, what you're saying, See, what you're seeing right there is you're trying to say that those three movies are niche British comedies, but it's a trilogy for a reason. It has supposed to have that similar vibe. So when you think of those three movies, yes, they're going to be similar in some tone.
Scott Pilgrim and Baby Driver, same niche comedy, for sure.
Young man, listen. When you think of those three movies, you're thinking of, yes, it's going to have similar in style and what it does. When you think of Scott Pilgrim, you don't think of those movies at all. Half the time, you don't even realize that that's the same director. And when you think of Baby Driver, you definitely don't think that's the same director. Other than the fact of the use of music and the use of editing, there's no real through line that shows similarities in his style and everything. He has range in his editing style and the way he makes it. He's able to bring the best out of Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. He's able to make Ansel Elgort a lead character who's like, wow, you really want to root this guy. And you make Michael Cera one of the most awkward person. You utilize him to the best. You make perfect casting choice. You make a great movie in him where he's able to kick ass and you actually believe it. Whereas you have Michael B. Jordan. If you take Michael B. Jordan out of those movies, you don't necessarily have. If you take Michael B. Jordan out of those three movies, you don't have the same impact that you have in Ryan Coogler. He's just not quite there in a filmmaking aspect. And he doesn't have that oomph that you need to really bring those movies. Whereas, other than the trilogy, you don't have the same actors in all five movies for Megahit.
Actually, the way you just said that, if you take we've taken Michael B. Jordan out of Ryan Coogler movies, and he doesn't really do as well when he's with Ryan Coogler. Coogler brings the best out of Michael B. Jordan in every single movie, and that's his kind of actor that he likes to work with. The thing with Edgar Wright is that he's got a style to his writing, but when it comes to directing, he's inconsistent. The World's End is probably one of the worst films of the 2010s because it kind of falls apart from a story level and from a sort of directing level. Hot Fuzz, sure, it's kind of funny. Scott Pilgrim is a kind of a mess. The thing with Scott Pilgrim is it's overall a bit of a mess. The thing is, no one really likes to watch Scott Pilgrim. No one really likes to watch Scott Pilgrim. Like Cody himself watched Scott Pilgrim, hated it. You know why? Because it doesn't really work as a story, and Edgar Wright doesn't really know how to manage that between film to film. The thing is, the Cornetto trilogy, you're right, follows the same sort of style, and it's kind of cookie cutter, and it gets boring from each film to each film to each film because he's kind of doing the same thing. Whereas with Scott Pilgrim, it really falls apart because he tries to do something different. And Baby Driver is not a musical, but it relies on soundtrack for a lame story. The thing with Ryan Coogler is he tells a different story that expands on different themes every time. And the thing is, he never does the same thing twice per se, but what he does is he takes themes and he expands on them and grows on them with each film and has something to say with each film, whereas yours is just kind of niche comedy and failed experiments.
So
wrapping up.
The thing with the Cornetto trilogy is you have zombie action, and it has the moments of how to deal with a relationship, how to deal with your mother, and how to really grow up as a man. Because that's the problem with Sean. When you have Hot Fuzz, you have a person who is a badass cop, and he moves to a small town, and you realize that there's this cult behind, and you really have to deal with those elements of how you don't want to deal with change. When you have The World's End, it's somebody who can't deal with the fact that he's growing up, and he really wants to go back to his roots, and it really has an emotional elements to it. You're really going back to where he used to be the man. He was Gary King, and then when he grows up, he's nothing. You start to learn that he has these social issues. He's been cutting himself. He's really hurting from behind. And when you have Scott Pilgrim, you have to deal with the fact of relationships of old, young, and how you deal with it, and it's a lot of fun. Did my best from the fact that he didn't let me talk much, and we're trying to be respectful.
I know. I'm trying. Hey, Caleb, I know you want to wrap things up, but literally back and forth, please.
That's why it's an exhibition. I'm having fun.
Henry did the same thing during Adam Sandler. So all I did was I just wrapped up my point. That's all I did. All right.
Okay. 1 minute whenever you start.
Exhibitions are dope.
He did his closing already, or do I?
He closes, you open.
Right. Okay. Other way around. Yeah. Right. Sorry.
Whenever you start speaking.
Ryan Coogler is a director that has something to say with each and every movie that he does. Fruitvale Station is a social commentary. Creed talks about legacy and how you have to shoulder burdens that you're attached with from birth. And is it fair? No, but how do you deal with that? And he does it in the context of a dead franchise. And with Black Panther, he goes into a vibrant living franchise and gives us a story that we have never seen in the context of a superhero movie, creates a cultural phenomenon, makes $1 billion. And he does it all whilst telling a story about how to progress post a terrible tragedy in your life and how to become what you need to be in your responsibilities. Edgar Wright just kind of does niche British comedy. For Shaun of the Dead is just it's a parody of Dawn of the Dead, and it doesn't really have much to say outside of that. It's good for a couple of yucks. Same with Hot Fuzz and World's End. Scott Pilgrim is a mess. It fails as a coming-of-age story. It fails as a comic book movie. It fails as a comedy. It fails in every aspect. And Baby Driver relies on a soundtrack in order to tell a story, whereas Ryan Coogler doesn't have to rely on anything. He's able to deliver great blockbuster, fun films with messages.
Time. Full of shit. Henry, 1 minute whenever you start speaking.
So, like I said earlier, the whole thing with Ryan Coogler is he's if you take out Mike B. Jordan of his movies, it's not the same, and that proves the fact that when you have Creed 2, the movie that didn't have Ryan Coogler at the helm, and it's still a really good movie. Some people like him more than the first, some people don't, but at the end of the day, it's still a serviceable sequel, and it didn't even have Ryan Coogler there. Some people actually think it was directed by Ryan Coogler. That just shows that when you do exactly what you need to do with the formula, it's not that hard to do. Whereas Edgar Wright, he's original. He really brings out the best. Like I said, there's heart in all of his movies. There's comedy. It has aspect. There's action, and you didn't give me enough time to really go into. Like I said, Shaun of the Dead. It really deals with relationships and family. With Hot Fuzz, it deals with career. With The World's End, it deals with growing up. With Scott Pilgrim, it deals with relationships and deals with action and really deals with what it takes to get the person that you really want to be with. And Baby Driver, it shows how when you have someone holding over yourself, you're really trying to grow up, but something's holding you back, and that's what he had with his debts. And when he finally got out, he did what it took to finally have that love, and it really had the great action. It has everything that you need. It's versatile, whereas, like I said, Ryan Coogler, cookie cutter director, and not really doing much to impress me that way.
Right. Okay. Maybe me as a bad judge, I'll go first, not letting back and forth take place. I had Kaleb in this one, but it was very close. I agree that in the next two rounds, I will do a better job of controlling the amount of time between people. Again, Henry, not everybody's like me and you. Just joking. But I would give it to Kaleb. I think he just hammered home a lot of good points, even though he's full of shit on one of them, and I know for a fact he is. But he did a good job trying to sell me on that. And I don't hold against the Michael B. Jordan's the only actor in it. I don't hold that as a mark, but I get where you were going with it, and I like the attempt. But I will give it to Kaleb, but again, that's why we have 3 judges on debate shows, because I could be totally wrong. Jacob, I'm going to go to you next. Tell me who deserves to get the point and why.
So this one's tough. This is probably the closest I've been. The biggest problem I've got is Kaleb had 2 knockout punches that he could have delivered and he didn't. There were 2, Henry just was wide open and allowing 2 knockout punches, and Kaleb didn't go for it. However, I do think Kaleb just snuck in underneath based on his arguments. His arguments of that each film is actually about something, and every single time he does tell a story, a unique story, and that really resonates with me, with me, and I appreciate that. Whereas with Henry's arguments about Edgar Wright, you were saying, his story is about action, and that's not a theme of a movie. Action, and so I am going to go with Kaleb. Kaleb, next time someone says that Creed is a predictable and he just took a cookie cutter relationship, so why doesn't it always work for every sports film?
Fair enough.
If you said that, that's a knockout punch, and there's no way that Henry can come back from that.
So just future reference, I'm so happy Jacob's on my debate squad, because the way he rules on judging, I'm so excited to hear him just debate. That's fantastic.
And I got Jacob.
You do not have Jacob. Incorrect, buddy. You left him high and dry. You took Nazario. Okay. So Malcolm, who would you have went with? It wouldn't have mattered, but who would you got?
I was actually leaning the other way. I actually thought Henry made some really good points. You take Michael B. Jordan out, Black Panther and Creed won't be the same. And I do think his points on Edgar Wright being very original, even though it is sort of parodying a genre, his themes and heart is in those movies, so I would have given Henry the point.
All
and it's not because of the certain poster behind me.
You sure?
I just like how the entire time Caleb's like, Shaun of the Dead's boring, The World's End's the worst movie of the 2010s. I'm like, what content are we getting here? Like, what depth are we having?
Henry, you have no idea how hard it was for me to say every single one of those words.
I know. That's why I can tell you were just doing low blows, because you didn't even name that shit.
I had to.
I can't.
And the judges took the bait. Fair enough.
Hey, you gotta sell it.
I don't know if he
again-
sold it. He just said some cheap ass low blows, but I'll take. That's why it's an exhibition.
Yep. But I mean, it was. I think the majority of it was the amount of time. To be truthfully honest. So again, I will just simply go for the next person to kick in if I think you've been talking too long. That's all I will do. No more, and wrap right then and let the other person talk. Also, the hand technique really just works. If you just let them, I got it. It should just let you signal like, okay, I'll finish this point and go.
Yeah,
because you can get a lot of points in 5 minutes if you show each other respect. That's all.
I personally thought I did. I said how movies.
You did.
Sorry.
You did.
That's the only one I'm mad about. This is gonna be fun.
I figured. 5 minutes, guys, it will all pass.
Someone's a salty.
Okay, so
Just for that one.
I wanted to go. Pretty much my favorite time of the year is here. It's the Oscar season, so I wanted to do 2 questions with 2 people. One that sees a lot of Oscar movies, has his own opinion, and one that had normally terrible choices, named a show after himself. So we'll see. Just kidding, Nikhil.
But not really.
Okay,
you're fired.
Yeah, that's fair. The question I have is, what movie shouldn't have been nominated for Best Picture? So the 8 movies that were nominated, they had to pick one movie that they say doesn't deserve. I don't need the replacement. You can say the movies that didn't get picked were better than that one. That's fine, but focus on why this movie especially shouldn't have been nominated for the Academy Awards. Okay, so Kaleb, you will open, and then you'll close this question. So 1 minute whenever you start speaking. Oh, also, this is game points, so if you win it, it's here. Henry's pissed. It's a freaking opening. Just go.
I know. All right, so when it comes to the Oscars, they have a certain style of movie that they like to award, even if it's not necessarily great. And that's the film that's is a biopic, check the box. Political movie, check the box. Has a buzzword name behind it, check the box. Has an Oscar-winning actor in it, check the box. That's Vice. Vice is a disorganized, unfocused, messy try at telling the life of a politician who it has, frankly, an intriguing story that they just didn't utilize. Christian Bale is a good performance in a fat suit, doing the exact same thing that Gary Oldman did last year. And Amy Adams is good for about half of a movie. Sam Rockwell is an SNL sketch. Steve Carell is and overall, Adam McKay really fails at trying to deliver a genuine comedy because he doesn't know what he's trying to do. He doesn't know what he wants. He doesn't know if he wants a straight comedy or an actual attempt at a political biopic. And it just kind of comes across as a messy, boring, overly long, bloated mess that really shouldn't be awarded for Best Picture. Bale, sure, gave a good performance, and maybe Amy Adams, but it's very poorly put together. It's very poorly directed, edited, written. It just falls apart in every aspect of the storytelling, and that is why Vice is not a deserving Best Picture candidate.
Henry, let us know what you picked and why.
All right. So when you think of what is the Best Picture, it's one of those situations where when you think of what shouldn't have been nominated, it's one of those situations where, similar to like how you have best directors that end up getting nominated for like, career awards and stuff. And I'm thinking that this situation here, because I'm choosing Black Panther, it shouldn't have been chosen for Best Picture as a nominee, because at the end of the day, it is a movie that follows a similar tone and vibe for comic book movies in the past. The only difference is that it has an African-American cast. At the end of the day, it truly doesn't take that many risks except for following the African-American culture. And it is important for that aspect of people and that culture. But at the end of the day, when you think of what is considered Best Picture, it is not the case, because when you really dissect that movie, it doesn't have that many elements that are really that deep. Whereas in Vice, it is everything you said earlier, check the box, and it is exactly what should have been nominated for Best Picture. And sometimes you got to take some risks, and this is just not the case. What should have happened?
All right. Dick Cheney versus Black Panther. Here we go.
Okay, so you just kind of shot yourself in the foot. You said that Vice checks all the boxes, and that is why it fits into the criteria. But you just riffed on Black Panther following a criteria and a model, and that is why it shouldn't be nominated for Best Picture. You just said Vice should be for doing the exact same thing. And the thing is, Black Panther does take risks, even though it follows the African American culture, and that might be the reason why you think it's nominated. It does take risks by killing off one of its primary villains halfway through the movie, and it does deal with really deep stuff. Go ahead.
So what I said it checks all the boxes for the Academy, like you said, and that's why that Vice should have been nominated, and that's just what you exactly did. Whereas Black Panther, it didn't check off the boxes of the Academy, it checked off the boxes of the cookie cutter formula of a story, and that's the difference there. With the thing you have with Vice, you said that Christian Bale's in a fat suit. Guess what? That's how great of how they made him look, because he really did gain all that weight, and you truly believe that he was in a fat suit, and that's how fantastic performance was. And guess what? You said that the tone was all over the place for that movie. That's the point. You're not trying to idolize somebody who did horrific things in the history. It's supposed to be all over the place, and it's supposed to be satirical. If you don't understand satire, that's on you. But at the end of the day, everything that happened in Vice shows the real depiction of how it happened, but it also had the blur of the lines, because guess what? Dick Cheney was that type of person. He was shady, but he was also quiet. He was that person. What did they say in the movie? The person who doesn't speak the most is the one you should fear the most, because it's the person that's behind the scenes that does exactly what he's really plotting out, and that's exactly what happened in the movie, and that's exactly what the plot did. It bounced over the place just because it was getting in your head as an audience, and that's exactly why it should have been nominated for Best Picture, because it got in your head.
The thing is, Vice doesn't get in your head. The thing is, Vice is just totally all over the place. That might be a choice, and that's a bad choice, because it makes for an unwatchable movie. The thing with Black Panther is it doesn't check all the boxes because it takes a lot of actual risks when it comes to the Oscars, and the Oscars are taking a risk by nominating it, because what it does is Black Panther actually delves into the idea of legacy, and it delves into that typical Ryan Coogler thought that he delves into. This is responsibility that I have to take, and now how do I burden this responsibility and this legacy that I now have to carry on my shoulders? And it actually makes for an interesting story, whereas Vice is just totally inconsistent all over the place, and Bale gives a fine performance.
So when you have a movie like Black Panther where you say it has compelling characters, but at the end of the day, the main character in Black Panther, he is the least compelling character. When you have standout performances like Michael B. Jordan, and guess what? You had a standout performance in Heath Ledger's The Joker, and he got a nomination. Guess what? Michael B. Jordan, arguably the best part of the movie, didn't get a nomination. That just shows that this movie is getting a pity vote for Best Picture nomination, because it's the time. And if you're really going to nominate a movie for Best Picture, you really wanted to take the risk as far as a story element. It does exactly what you need. Guess what? The king, he becomes king. Guess what? Somebody challenged him. Guess what? He falls. Guess what? He comes back. It does exactly what you want to do. Whereas in Vice, it shows the real dark elements of what American history. And guess what? There's another part in the middle of the movie that I don't want to spoil, just because of the fact that it's my favorite part of the movie, and it shows the risk of, like, guess what? Here's what we're gonna do. And I'm saying guess what a lot, by the way. But here's what we're gonna do, and guess what? It doesn't do that. It diverts the expectations, where Black Panther does exactly what you expect to. You said it killed off one of the main villains, but at the end of the day, that happens sometimes. So that's not really taking a risk.
Thank you for explaining to me how a character's arc works by saying that he rises and falls and then comes back again. That's how fucking storytelling works.
Yeah, but your whole argument is the fact that Black Panther takes the risk, but it doesn't.
You just talk for 5 minutes. Let me talk. Here's the thing. Black Panther actually tells a good story all the way through about all these people. Sure, Black Panther.
We only see one city in Wakanda. One part of Wakanda. We only see one part of Wakanda.
Sure, the main character of Black Panther is not as compelling as the rest of the cast, but the rest of the cast does all the heavy lifting, and that's because it's a great ensemble and a great overall story. The story itself is why you're watching the movie, not Black Panther. The thing is, you're watching Vice for the main performance and the story doesn't deliver, so you're left looking for a great performance, and Bale gives us an okay one. There's nothing really to gravitate and hold on to inside that movie, whereas Black Panther itself is an overall compelling story with good characters and good performances.
That is a subjective thing that you're saying, that he gives an okay performance. Honestly, when you ask everybody what is the best performance of the year, people are going to say Christian Bale. So you saying something like that, it is an okay performance. That's just you trying to put it in people's heads. When you have Black Panther, it did. Like I said, it is a cookie cutter, and you have all the elements, but the main character is the least compelling part of the movie. So if you take him out, you take Mike B. Jordan, who wasn't even nominated. So it shows it's everything. It just doesn't come together. It's a comic book movie. It does it pretty much ultimately what every other comic book movie does. So the fact that it's nominated for Best Picture, it's kind of like you said, taking a risk. But it's more of a cheap risk, because it's like awarding the director for somebody with their career. It's not really quite there. And honestly, guess what? Remember that best popular category they were going to do? That was specifically for Black Panther. And then they reneged on it, so they gave it an Oscar nomination. It was cheap and is undeserved. Vice had everything that you need in an Oscar movie, and it was great. And Christian Bale's performance is great, even though you're trying to say it's not.
The thing is, when you ask people what the greatest performances of the year, they don't say Bale. They say Malik or Bale, or not Bale. Bradley Cooper.
Yeah, see, you couldn't even get
Bradley
that out of
Cooper.
your head.
Bradley Cooper. But the thing, okay,
Time.
shut the fuck up.
You couldn't even get them out of your head. They say Malik and Bale. Thank you.
Malik and Cooper.
Checkpoint.
Okay.
I'm first.
Henry, you go first. 1 minute when you start speaking.
Okay, so all the knocks that I'm hearing on Vice are just very subjective things. You're saying that, oh, it has a weird editing choice. Christian Bale's performance isn't that good. It does everything. It doesn't really do things that you like. But at the end of the day, when you think of what is Best Picture nominee, you think of politics, you think of great performances, you think of great story, you think of great ensemble. You said your movie has a great ensemble. Fair, I'll give you that. But even Michael B. Jordan wasn't nominated for Best Supporting Actor. At least Amy Adams and Sam Rockwell were nominated for theirs. So it actually shows more weight to that cast. And the story in Black Panther is cliche. Like I said, it has exactly everything that you expect it to happen. The only thing that you truly don't expect to happen is the fact that Michael B. Jordan is so great. And yes, I'll give him credit for that. He should have been nominated. But everything beat for beat is pretty much exactly what you would expect in a comic book movie. And honestly, just a story like this where it's trying to be epic, but it's overall mediocre. And then that third act is just CGI fight of just, this is exactly what you expect for a superhero movie. So it doesn't transcend the genre, and it's great for the culture, but it doesn't deserve Best Picture.
All right.
Nominated,
stricken from the record. Caleb, tell us. You got 1 minute.
If it's cliche for Black Panther to rise, win, fall, and then come back, well, your movie does the exact same thing. Dick Cheney gets the office of power. He gets there. He runs for president. He falls, fails, is out for a while, and then he comes back as the vice president and does all this stuff. So if you want to go cliche, your movie's fucking cliche too. Here's the thing. The movie that you do, all film is subjective. So yes, I say the editing doesn't really work, and that's because as the viewer, the editing is all over the place. The tone, it doesn't really work. I'm not getting anything out of this movie. It is just a messy movie that tries to feed me this story about a guy that I am genuinely interested in wanting to know about, and they just don't educate me. Christian Bale doesn't really give the greatest performance. He's maybe the third best performance of the year. Amy Adams is good for half a movie and then disappears. Sam Rockwell is playing an SNL character performance, and Steve Carell is the only character in this movie that I actually kind of want to see the performance get nominated for, and he doesn't even show up for all that much. Black Panther takes risks, it changes things, it actually deals with legacy and burdens, and it is the riskier Best Picture nomination, which is why it deserves to be there over the straight white movie that everyone would normally nominate.
Everybody nominate stricken from the record.
You're funny.
All right. Caleb. No, Jacob. Tell us who would have won this point in your eyes.
So this is tough because Henry was winning it because I was waiting for Caleb to say one thing, and he said it right at the very end, which was over the straight white film. However, I don't think that was enough of an argument, and I hate myself for saying this, but I'm giving it to Henry because I hate the argument that Black Panther shouldn't be nominated, and I hate that Vice got nominated, but Henry gave the better argument.
All right. 1 point. Malcolm, who would you have given your point to and why? Or, yeah, it still matters, so go ahead.
Guess what? My point goes to Henry because I agree with everything Jacob says. Like, Caleb put up a good fight, but I don't think it was just enough to counter all of Henry's points. I mean, I think Henry's points made sense, and it's it is pretty much sort of on the nose as well. As like, it's one of those cookie cutter like origin superhero movies out there. So that point kind of start the landing, and I think Caleb was facing an uphill battle there. So my point goes Henry.
All right, Henry.
That's fair. He gets a filibuster round. I get a filibuster round. There we go.
What is Caleb even on today?
I don't think he filibustered.
Yes, he did. He talked for a lot of it. You did once for him and like 3 for me, and I didn't. Yeah, whatever. All right.
Okay.
Judge's ruling.
Yeah, you're blinded. Because you went for a little bit. I even went on your round and not on Henry, so I'm really confused by this.
Yeah, that's the point. You did on me and not on him at all. Anyway.
Exactly. He let you in. Okay.
No, he talked for 8 minutes.
Please do not talk to the king of debate this way. I know decorum when it comes to debate. Okay, shut your mouth. I literally, if I would have thought that, literally, I let you talk the entire last round.
Fine.
So, I would have went the same way. I'm strongly with Henry in personal and in this judging. I don't believe Black Panther should be nominated. Nothing against the film. I think the film is great. I just don't feel like this should have been the first one. And it's an okay movie. I like it. I rewatched it. It's just not the best comic book movie of the year. So I have a problem with it being the flag bearer. But again, I think Henry talked really well with describing it back and forth. He kind of had the uphill battle, to be honest, in a group in this community, especially of comic book fans. That's not a popular choice at all. So, good job, Henry, debating that. So we're going into the final question. This is going to be a battle.
Just for the record, I disagree with all of you.
Jacob,
absolutely deserved to be.
As soon as I realized that this was the next question on my game point, I was like, "Fuck, I'm gonna lose it because Jacob's gonna just pick the other way just because." So I'm glad. I appreciate you being unbiased.
I was hoping Kaleb would find it, would get the answer. I was just like hoping for something.
I was sitting, Jacob. I was sitting on it. Because at the very end, I was gonna hit him with it so he couldn't rebut it. That was my plan.
I would love to have a conversation with Jacob about it, but right now we're going to the final question.
All right.
So I went completely broad on this question. I did not. It doesn't have to be nominated. It doesn't have to have any of those merits. But I went best acting performance, male or female, of 2018. So Henry, you will open and close this question. Again, this is game point. So win or lose, somebody's going to be mad at the end of this. And again, I will lap each time on my stopwatch when somebody goes in so we know exactly how many times somebody is talking. Okay?
Fair.
So you have 5 minutes. Henry, whenever you start speaking.
Well, 1 minute, but yeah, I know what you mean.
1 minute, you know what I
mean. All right. So when you think of the overall best acting performance, you think of something that is the most memorable, something that really has the foundation of the movie, something that is going to stand the test of time for years to come, something that transcends acting as a whole. And I'm going with Toni Collette in Hereditary. The fact that she was not nominated for an Oscar and it's pissing everybody off already shows that it was a great performance. And then when you really dissect everything that she had to do in that movie, really shows how great of a performance it was and how only Toni Collette could have done that performance. And we'll get into further moving forward.
This is another reason why I'm a huge fan of Henry. He does not have to talk for 7 minutes in his opening. So appreciate it. Kaleb, don't feel like I need you to shorten it down. I like when it's quick and to the point. So Kaleb,
thanks for the shot. Now I know exactly where you're leaning.
Take a couple deep breaths and you can start your opening.
Cody, I'm giving you shit. Calm down.
Remember who you're going to meet in Chicago, buddy.
Dude, you already have said you're going to punch me like 8 times in the face. It's okay.
Yeah, that's number 9. Go ahead.
9? 9th?
9? 8? Way to go, man.
When I think the best acting performance of the year, I think of something that everyone is still talking about, everyone is still watching, and it actually delivered a full emotional experience with a good arc and a great performance from point A to point B. Bradley Cooper in A Star is Born gives me that. He gives me this emotional ride of this down on his luck performer who who just had the greatest heights of his life and has fallen down into this pit and starts to climb back up there when he starts falling in love and bringing this other new performer up with him, and their shared experience of her becoming this great artist and him standing there being supportive while also self-destructing on the inside because he's jealous of it. It's this emotional character ride culminating in a tragic end for that character after the climb back up from falling down again. The thing with Toni Collette is that it's just another horror performance. Anyone can really look horrified for 2.5 hours at things that are off camera, and I don't think that's going to be very memorable. It's going to be as memorable as Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween 2000 H2O 20 years later.
Okay. 5 minutes. I guess Henry is going to start it out. Go.
So I appreciate you for acknowledging the fact that Toni Collette is going to be as memorable as Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode in the Halloween movies, because guess what? She is one of the most memorable movie characters of all time, let alone in the horror franchise. So she's already setting the precedent there, and that is with somebody who wasn't even nominated. With everything that you have with Bradley Cooper, guess what? He's a little drunk. Guess what? He's a little sad. Guess what? He's a little angry. That can be done by anybody. And also, guess what? I just watched a video the other day where at a Lady Gaga concert where she brought Bradley Cooper upstage. He did a fine job, but you can definitely tell that most of his singing in the movie was, enhanced by editing and all that stuff. He's an okay singer, but most credit that he gets in that movie is the fact of how great of a singer he was, but he's not even that good of a singer. He had a lot of help in that movie. Toni Collette, it's all emotion. It's all raw. There's an art there that has that emotion. It's in the eyes. It's in the face. It brings everything that you need. It's dark, brutal. It is really heartbreaking, and it makes you sad. Bradley Cooper, he's sad. Whatever.
That is a gross understatement of a dramatic performance that is about alcoholism. It's all nuanced, it's all subtle. And maybe he's not the greatest singer, but Toni Collette, anyone can look horrified. Sure, you, Chance, Paul, and Lucas are mad that she wasn't nominated for an Oscar, but no one's really talking about that.
Damn
no
right.
one's really mad about Toni Collette being missing, because look at the other five. The other five performances that were nominated for Best Actress are better. There are better acting performances than Toni Collette. She's just horrified, whereas Bradley Cooper gives us a full, nuanced performance in a character arc about fall and coming back, and it ends tragically for him. But he gives us a full-fledged emotional buffet on the way, whereas Toni Collette's just scared for 2 hours.
So what you just said, I like how you said that, how Bradley Cooper really had the heart that he had to get drunk. Guess what? He's probably been drunk before, so he knows how to act drunk. And you said Toni Collette, anybody can just stare in the dark and be afraid of something. She's never seen in real life exactly what she's looking at, so she really had to have that performance. If you think of the dinner scene alone in Hereditary with everything, that is the one that you come back to most. When you think of scenes from A Star Is Born, most of them are Lady Gaga led. Some of the memorable scenes, you might have some back and forth, but neither of them stand each other out or they outshine each other. Whereas Hereditary, Toni Collette is the lead performance no matter what. She's the most memorable performance of that and is the best performance of the year. Whereas Bradley Cooper, he does a nice little parallel with Lady Gaga, but nothing really outshines.
The thing is, everyone's talking about how Bradley Cooper's better than Lady Gaga and how Lady Gaga doesn't even need to deserve her award. The thing with Toni Collette is that you can stand there and do a raspy, high-pitched scream for 2.5 hours. That doesn't make you the best. The thing with Bradley Cooper is, yeah, he's drunk for a while, but the thing is, he's also got that smiling, that heart. He has to connect with people, and he has to connect with the audience. He has to be someone that you care about, and he does that. He's not just a drunk. Sure, he has to be drunk. That's part of the character. But the thing is, he gives the full-fledged performance of the depression, the struggle with alcoholism, the struggle to become the better version of you, the jealousy of seeing someone get what you had and you want it back so badly, but you're happy for them for having that. And the thing is, he gives that whole performance, whereas Toni Collette, there's nothing really to dive into with her. She's just scared of things that don't exist, and anyone can do that. Like we've seen countless people do that. We've seen Anya Taylor-Joy do that. Is she great? Not really.
Yeah, but nobody's talking about the performance. You're talking about Toni Collette. It's not an understated performance. You said she just keeps screaming the entire time. That is not what it is. In that movie, she has to be a mother, she has to be a wife, and she has to be a daughter. There's elements of it. Bradley Cooper, he has to be drunk. If you take anybody out of the movie, they're going to do the same thing. I don't want to harp on this too much because I know this is biased because the judge already said it, but you have performances like Jeff Bridges in Crazy Heart. That type of performance can be done by anybody. All you have to do is really get your voice down a little bit, be drunk, and spoilers for Star Is Born if you haven't seen it. All right, you were warned. So there's a moment in the movie, what happens at the end, where he kills himself, and it isn't even talked about until about 10 minutes before that scene where he's like, oh yeah, when I was 13, I tried to hang myself. It is a cheap pool of something that is really dramatic in real life, but in the story, it is not earned. It doesn't do anything that you want. So that emotion that you think that you're having for that character is just a cheap little plot device for the story, and it's not really earned from the performance. The standouts is the relationship, but like I said, he doesn't even really high up her, and you have Sam Elliott's character. He's the one that they're talking about the most, where it's the most surprising.
The thing is, you're not watching the movie then, because they mention it at least twice before that point early in the movie. The thing is, yeah, there's Jeff Bridges and Crazy Heart. There's things to pull from. Toni Collette has a bunch of horror movies to pull from to look and be scared at. The thing is, it's what they did in that role. Toni Collette doesn't really do much. She really just screams and yells, and sure, she talks about, oh yeah, my mom died off camera before the movie starts. Somehow that makes me a daughter. And that's
yeah,
not
because
really
that is the element. That is the element with their
relationship.
That is the element with their relationship of the
Hey, you have to go.
Hey. All right. The thing is, Toni Collette really doesn't. There's nothing really about the daughter part that plays in her character. The mother, she screams at her kid for 5 minutes in the movie. Sure, that makes her a mom. The thing with Bradley Cooper is that the whole movie actually plays into his development, his character arc, the jealousy, every emotion that he has to portray throughout the movie. And just because we've seen other characters like that in the past doesn't mean what he's doing is invalid. He gives us that whole performance all the way through.
You have the relationship with Simon thing. It is earned. Yes, you have the relationship, the death early, but that shows from the beginning what you need to go to at the end.
You all had even time the entire way. Both of you.
Which is why I wasn't. That's why I wasn't afraid to do that end, because I knew it was pretty balanced.
Well, the whole reason why you had 57 at the last part and he jumped in and he was only at 30. So I was trying to let him at least finish his viewpoint. It's okay. Henry, no, Kaleb. Open. Henry will close. Make it count. Last one. And you're going to be pissed off at the judges regardless what the ruling is. So here we go.
Just because we have seen other people do Bradley Cooper's role before doesn't necessarily mean that what he's doing is invalidated by it. He takes that role of the jealous, down on his luck performer and eats it up. He does really, really well at that part, and he makes you feel the depression. They talk about how he tried to kill himself at least 3 times before that part in the movie. So that's why when that part comes, it still hurts. It kills you because you saw that that was something that he went through, and you watch him move closer and closer towards that. You see him get better. You see him get worse. You see him jealous. You see him happy. You see him sick. You see him healthy. It's all the range that Bradley Cooper shows throughout this entire performance. Toni Collette doesn't really show any range. She sits there and she yells and screams and raises her voice and is raspy and makes big eyes. That's the standard trope of any horror performance leading lady. And it's not particularly memorable. We're not really going to talk about Toni Collette in a year because it's just another horror movie. It's just another screaming performance, another screaming Mimi performance, as I like to call him. Whereas Bradley Cooper is recognized for his performance, and it's going to be one we talk about because it is an iconic performance, and we're going to keep talking about it for years to come.
Time. All right, Henry, 1 minute. Make it count.
So I think it's funny that you say that we're going to be talking about Bradley Cooper from years to come for this movie, but guess what? I'm sure that Judy Garland and the other actors in the other Star-Born movies were really good, but we're not talking about them today. This is a movie that is a cliche story. It does exactly what you expect it to do, but we're not going to be talking about it. Whereas you have a movie like Hereditary, it is, but you can say you can call it a cult movie, but like I compared earlier, Jamie Lee Curtis, you're going to be talking about these lead performances for being one of the best acting performances of all time, let alone one of the best actress performance, let alone one of the best horror performances. She does everything that you need. She has the moments where she's dealing with her mother's death, the fact that she was lost and she didn't feel like the daughter, she didn't feel loved like she wanted to be. She's going to those AA meetings for lost ones. She has to deal with the loss of somebody in the movie in the beginning other than her mother. She also has to deal with how she's handling her relationship with her son, with her husband, and the mystery that is behind the entire ghost thing. With everything with Bradley Cooper in A Star Is Born, he did kind of a dark voice in American Sniper, so he's not even going that much out of his element there because he's kind of channeling what he did a couple years before in American Sniper, and plus the character itself is exactly what you expect to be. It's sad, but not really that different.
Not really that different, stricken from the record. Okay, I'm going to be the one to take the bullet if it happens this way, so I'm going to go to Malcolm first. Malcolm, who do you get the point to and why?
Yeah, this is tough because I disagree with what Henry chose for the argument, but he managed to convince me of that Toni Collette was the better acting choice, because just he brought up a lot of good points from the movie that I thought did work, and I think I didn't hear enough from Kaleb about why Bradley Cooper was the better performance of 2018, and I think Henry's knocks on Cooper, that the fact that it's been done before and that no one's really talking about the other Star Is Born performances either that much, kind of stuck with me, so my point goes to Henry.
Okay, I'm going to go next, and I'll let Jacob, because I'm going Kaleb. Again, this was super tough, but I think the overall selling of what Kaleb did for the character, because the whole thing was what I consider in debate, it's called the step back, and he kind of made Henry step back a lot to defend Toni Collette. That's kind of the fighter that Kaleb is, and it's a bitch to fight against. But I think that I heard great things about Tony Collette, but I didn't hear quite enough because he had to keep going into Jeff Bridges through Bradley Cooper. I hate Jeff Bridges because it was just hit after hit, but he painted the picture to me why Bradley Cooper was. But again, it's 1-1. Jacob, decide who the winner is.
Well, it's going to give me a lot of hate. I've never seen an own goal so quickly and so just. As soon as he said it, I went, that's the match. Because Henry pounced on it, and when Kaleb said, we're going to remember her like Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween, that was the biggest own goal, and that cost him the match. Because, like you just said, we're going to remember Tony Collette like one of the most all-time greatest horror performances ever. Sorry, Kaleb. That's the biggest own goal I've ever seen, and that cost you the match, and you never recovered from it. You never corrected yourself, or you never made your way back from it. And then Henry brought it back up again, and you still didn't correct yourself on it. And from that, I have to go with Henry.
And your winner by a score of 3-2, Henry Sanchez. Again, I kind of let it skate with that one because I heard H2O. I know where he was going, but
I also not to be whatever, but I did bring it up again. I did fight it back, but I'm not going to say anything else. That's fine.
But fantastic. This was not a prep debate. This was just off the cuff. This was a lot of fun. I couldn't have picked a better thing to do on a Friday. I think it was a fun battle, even though I'm pretty sure Kaleb hates his life at this point. Because not only did he lose to Henry, he lost on the last question again. So, again, you're on my team now in debate. If we can get this going, we will hopefully counteract the last point problems. But, man, fantastic match. Again, I love the questions that we got to debate tonight. And we learned some things. I can't wait to see Jacob in here and battle somebody because Jacob's judging is fantastic, I will say. I
recruited him for a reason. You didn't believe me, but I was like, I got faith in Jacob.
Okay. Jacob is a fantastic judge, and I think he'll even be a better debater when he goes and slays one of Henry's team for me. So, Henry, how do you feel how the match went? How do you feel about the questions? And which one are you the most ticked off that you lost?
Deep down, I'm pretty bummed out that I didn't go 3-0 to start it off. I understand, why the judges went that way, and the only one I disagree with is the Edgar Wright one, and I would have been fine losing the Best Picture one because I was like, I can see both ways. I just didn't truly believe the reasons behind the Edgar Wright Ryan Coogler one, and that is what it is. But like I said, Kaleb is the type of guy where he's going to implant things into the judge's mind. I tried to strategically approach that today by not getting too hyper and overreactive and going over the top because I knew exactly what he was going to try and get out of me, and I was hoping that went to my benefit. I think it did, to be honest, and I'm glad. I'm hoping that I can really get into my my guys' heads when we start preparing for debates like Nazario and all that stuff against Kaleb, because he's going to do that. He's going to push your buttons. So hats off to Kaleb. I'm glad I beat you. I'm definitely surprised when I talk afterwards if take out that one word at that one line if Jacob still would have went for me, because I think it could have gone either way, and I definitely respect it. It was a great debate, and Kaleb, good man.
Yes, and hopefully that debate actually happens soon because we got one confirmation of a person that can do it tomorrow. Who knows about the other person? So, but again, once we get these going, I think we'll have a lot of fun with them. Kaleb, how do you feel? Do you hate every one of us? Even though I did give you the last point, so you can't hate me. But going forward, are you excited for Nazario? Do you think you can counteract this last question thing, or are you super pissed at everybody here and you wish bad things upon all?
The only person here that I'm pissed at is Malcolm because he never voted for me once because Malcolm is a New Zealand evil. No, I'm kidding. I love
he
Malcolm.
Did vote for you.
I know. I'm kidding. But I think I did good. I think I did surprisingly well for little to no prep. And I think I won the last fight, but I think that's fine. People hear what they hear, and that's how it goes, and you can't really get mad about that. So I think Henry did good. Henry gave me good fights. and I think I put up a great fight too. And I can't wait to fight Henry again, because I think next time it comes on the last question again, it goes differently. It just depends on the fight, depends on the judges, depends on the week. I can't wait to fight him again. And I think the judging was great tonight. So good job, guys.
There's a lot of people in this community that I personally feel like if I went 7 rounds with them, that it could be the best. It could be 4-3 either way multiple times. And Caleb's definitely one of them. Cody's one of them. Jacob could be one of them. Nazario, like there's people in this community where it's like if I went 7, it could be go any way, each time. So World Series, we'll get there.
At the end of the day, when it comes to debate, it doesn't matter about your record. It doesn't matter about your skill. It's how you debate it. And I think you both put on one of the best no prep fights I've ever seen. Like, this was literally a spur of the moment. You didn't answer this, Caleb. Will you beat Nazario, and are you excited for that match?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna beat Nazario. I'm not scared about Nazario. I've prepped hard for Nazario. I'm gonna win that fight.
And I have a type of match for certain 2 people on the team, but I'll save that for off the stream. See if we can get that one done. But yes, that was a fantastic thing. Thanks for joining us. Please like, comment, subscribe. Henry does great things on this channel. He needs more support and more people watching because he really does great things. So, see you later. Peace out.